Okay, Ross, first of all, Alan McGlashan, now you've been in the post for a while, how would you assess the Youth Academy compared to Southampton's?
Yeah, so two very different academies, that's for sure. Lots of good work going on here. Craig Mulholland's been leading our academy work now for about 5 years. We're starting to see the fruits of that work now, I would say. And the progression of Nathan Patterson has been a big plus for us over the last year, as has some other players that I'll talk about later who are starting to train with the first team all the time now. So really impressed with a lot of the work that's going on. One of my big roles here has been to try and have a real clear football strategy, a clear way of working between our staff, between our squads, join everything up to the overall football strategy as opposed to the academy working on its own. So we feel really happy with the direction of that right now. In terms of Southampton, I think it's important to say, I noticed when I was having a flick through the questions earlier, somebody asked a question about Ajax as well. And I think when we're talking about Ajax and Southampton, we're talking about something very, very different, because that's two clubs that are absolutely embedded in success with youth development, success with academy graduates across a period of 30 or 40 years. It goes without saying that's not the place Rangers are in right here, right now. Of course, the academy's shown some success in the past, but those are clubs that have been absolutely talent factories, if you want to call them that. Clearly, I was proud to be part of everything that went on at Southampton over the last 5 years, and the academy there is an absolute cornerstone of everything that will happen there forevermore. We want the academy to be more influential here than it has been in the past, but equally we don't expect to just turn on a switch and start producing 30 players every year overnight. So I'm fortunate to have had a wonderful experience in the academy at Southampton. I'm fortunate that what we've got here is loads of good work, but they're two very, very different things, also with two very, very different expectations around the aims and objectives of the two clubs as well.
That takes on nicely to the second point. What improvements would you still like to implement at the academy?
Lots. As I say, we're working across a football strategy at the moment. Craig Mulholland, Craig Robertson and I have spent a lot of time in working out where the academy fits with that. Expanding our talent ID and our scouting and recruitment across the whole club, including the academy, of course, and our girls and women, has been a big part of that. So that'll be the first thing. There's lots and lots of different things that we're working through from a strategy point of view just now. I mentioned already phase one of those announcements was a restructure around 3 months ago now, I think. We are quite close to completing the second phase of that, which we'll announce and tie in with our staff in the very near future. But make no mistake, there's lots of work to do here to get the whole club to where we want to get it to. We feel confident that our direction's good, and I'm talking about the whole club and the academy there. But the energy here to turn this into what we want to turn it into is really, really strong.
Alex Roger asks, can we see more youth players from abroad, as in the best young talent we can afford?
So I touched on it there. So expanding our scouting network is important to us. There's been quite a lot of coverage in the national media down south over the last few days regarding the revised work permit criteria, which will affect all clubs in the UK post Brexit. That once the outcome of that is established, that will have a really strong impact on what we can and can't do regarding youth players from abroad. It's our anticipation that whether you're a young player from Scandinavia or a young player from France or a young player from Brazil, the same criteria will effectively apply, and that will have a big impact on our strategy and our approach to how we do that. But I think it's also important to say that as we up our game in talent ID across the whole club and scouting across the whole club, Scotland and the United Kingdom will remain an absolute core of that, because we are a Scottish club, we are a British club, and we want to make sure we've got some strong British talent here as well.
Ross, will we see any youth moving up to the first team squad?
Of course, we've already seen that now, I'm pleased to say. I think it's also important when we talk about Nathan Patterson's progression that what we've not got here now is he's not an academy player training with the first team. He's a confirmed member of the first team squad now. Stephen and I are really happy with everything he's doing every day with the first team. Obviously, just ahead of him, he's got the captain who's in outstanding form right here, right now. But I must say, James Tavernier's outstanding for Nathan, to learn off him every day. He's great with him around the place, he's great with him on the training ground as well. So also over the last few weeks we have Kieran Dixon and Leon King training with the first team every day. Brian Kinnear's joined him with the training every day as well. So that's really positive for us. And I think I watched the training session on Saturday morning before the Hamilton fixture, where Craig Mulholland was with me actually, and I was saying to him that for those young players to work on a consistent basis as they are at the moment, with Stephen Gerrard, Gary McAllister, Tom Coulshaw and Michael Beale, and all the experience all of these guys have across their careers, Michael's career across player development is fantastic for these young players that we've got here.
Absolutely. Alan Olsen asked, what targets have been set for youth development and progression to the first team?
Yeah, so we're setting that out very clearly now internally. Those talents won't just be about progression to the first team, but that'll be an important one, of course. We'll look at, I've mentioned that in our initial restructure, we mentioned the restructuring of our phases, from the foundation phase to the youth development phase to the professional development phase and into the B team. So there'll be some targets around the progression between phases. There'll be some targets around how we push our youngest players forward, or our A-grade players as we will call them. How do we push them forward through the structure? There'll be some targets around international recognition. There will definitely be targets around playing for Rangers and being promoted to play for Rangers. That's obviously a key cornerstone of what we need the academy to become, and we can see the start of that now, as I've mentioned. But we also have to remember that not every player will play for Rangers that comes through the academy, but we need to make sure that we maximise every individual's potential to get them to where they can get to as well, and create some value for Rangers in the process, as we've started to do as well across the last year, which is also important to us.
Question you referred to earlier, Colin Crichton. How far away from the Ajax model are we, where we replace youth players from departing players, etc., from the first team? Yeah,
so I'm quite close to the Ajax model. I know it really well, and Mark Overmars, the technical director there, has done a great job. I follow their progress really closely. A good friend of mine is the captain there now, Dusan Tadic. And he's probably quite a good example of it. Ajax's model has always been around the development of their young players, and it's a cornerstone of what they do there. But you can see that they've slightly changed the model as well to tie in scouting and recruitment as well. They recruited some experienced players, Dusan being one of them, Daley Blind being another one, to ensure that they've got a really strong blend between the young players that come through, young players that recruit from elsewhere, and some experience as well. So we can see that they've slightly tweaked that strategy, as I say. But they're 30 or 40 years into the project that they've got on the go there. It's a culture there.
Next one, can you give us an update on the pillars you talked about previously, and any updates regarding them? Scouting, recruitment, training, youth academy, medical and sports science. Yeah, that's important. I'm glad that's been picked up actually. So those pillars that's been referred to there, those are the key cornerstones by which we'll develop our football strategy across all of the areas that you mentioned already. So talent ID is one that we've grown significantly over the last year. It's an area of the club that I felt was massively under-resourced. I've been backed superbly by the chairman and the investors and the board here to make sure that we develop all of those pillars. We had to build a European scouting network. There wasn't one here before. The scouting department was very different from what I'd left behind in Southampton, but with some fantastic people in it. Andy Skolden's leading that. We've got a really strong group of staff that were already here, but we've supplemented that quite strongly now, particularly building out that European footprint, making our working data much stronger, joining our academy talent ID into that so that there's one department there. Medically, I think the question touched on, we've grown that department, we've resourced that more. Similar to my scouting answer, we had some really strong operators here already, and we have enhanced that. The work that Mark Waller and Jordan Milsom are doing across our medical and sports science and performance areas is taking us to new levels as well. We've invested quite heavily in how the facilities, the resource around medical and sports science, and we're really pleased with that. The facility here at Auchenhowie is massively important to us. It has to be an elite level facility, and again we've made more investment to get that to the level that we want to get to, with more to come. Stuart Robertson and I have been doing a walk around the facility this morning, looking at where the opportunities are for us to continue to make this place as strong as we possibly can. I think the fans know already the work that we've done at Ibrox over the summer as well to continue to enhance that. But all of the pillars, the player development academy being one of them that I've spoken in detail on already, that's the cornerstone of the work we're doing here every day, is making each of those pillars as strong as we possibly can. I think I remember in my first press conference here, I was asked a question about something about priorities and importance,
I think what I said at the time remains now, that we want Rangers to be the strongest possible club in every way that we can, and that means investing and improving every single one of those pillars to be the best they possibly can for the betterment of Rangers, and that's the focus.
Is it easier to find players from the more affordable end of the world market for Scottish clubs than the top end for EPL teams?
I think that it goes without saying that there's huge wealth in England, given the size of the television deals, for example, and that has an impact on the market. That's clear. We can see a similar pattern over the last 12 months with a new TV deal in France and the impact that's had on the transfer market there. So yeah, I think so there are markets where the players are overpriced or priced at a level that we can't afford. That's a given. We know that. What we've got to do is have a really clear scouting and recruitment strategy, and that involves us having good people, good teams, and a really strong network of people working for Rangers, a really strong information coming into the club all the time, a strong network. I feel that we have that now. It's one of the areas that I felt we really had to up our game in, and we have to understand each market, and the nature of the question that was asked there. I think there are certain markets that we know are difficult for us to compete in for the majority of players, but we've got to have the knowledge within the club to be able to understand that and maximise the opportunities that are there for us, and we feel that we've started to do that now as a club, but that work never stops.
Finally, Cameron, do you think it's important for you to get the best fees possible for players leaving the club and not the recent model of players being paid off or letting contracts expire?
I think to Finley's question there, I think that goes into the answer I said earlier about Rangers having to try and be as strong as we possibly can in all areas, and player trading in terms of outgoings is also important. We've got to maximise the value of any player that we do choose to sell. I went on record a couple of weeks ago at the close of the transfer window, and we were made offers for some players in the summer that we didn't think met those values, so those players are still here. So when players do leave the club here, I certainly want to make sure that we maximise value for them. I think it goes without saying that there will be certain opportunities and moments where we will decide to let a player's contract run down, but that will be a strategy as opposed to someone else's decision, and that will be because it ties into something that we want to do in scouting and recruitment elsewhere. We remodelled the first team squad a lot in the summer, in its shape and its size and the framework of it. But that'll always be part of what we do. Since I joined, I think I've said this before as well, that culture that we're talking about, players being paid to leave, or it was probably synonymous with the chapter in Rangers history where there was some players here that weren't going to be part of the next chapter. So maybe that was something that had to be done, but it's certainly not something that I've been doing across the last year. And we've managed to transition the squad in the direction that we wanted to, and we understand clearly now what that squad plan looks like going forward into the next windows as well.
The second part of Finley's question is, do you not believe it will always be a buying club as we can't afford to take time bedding youth in?
I think I've said it a couple of times now, we've got to be really, really strong at everything, and if there's a young player in our academy that we all believe in, then Stephen will give that player an opportunity, but at the same time, if there's an opportunity for us to go and improve our team immediately with a recruit from elsewhere, and it fits for us to do that within the squad plan, then we'll go and do that as well. We've got to be strong developers of talent. We've got to be strong in scouting and recruitment. We've got to be strong in player trading in and out, and we've got to be strong in planning our squads all the time. So all of those things need to happen at once. I saw the question earlier as well. I don't believe that if we buy other players it blocks other players out. I don't believe that at all. Because if we're working at a clear plan and a clear strategy, then we will know that if it's Matt Polster or it's Ross McCrory or it's John Flanagan that leaves, and we know we've got Nathan Patterson coming next, then there's a clear squad plan there. But equally, when there's a gap at left back and we go and recruit Calvin Bassey from elsewhere because there's not an immediate left back within the pipeline, then that's part of a strategy. Where I think Finley would be right would be if we had no strategy at all and we were just slapdash all over the market and nothing was aligned to our academy, nothing was aligned to our squad, and nothing was aligned to our contracts. Then he would be right. But I'm glad to say we're not in that place.
Topsy-turvy. Okay, what are the stages or processes in purchasing a player for the academy, and how do we ensure the money is spent wisely?
So we're investing strongly in our scouting and recruitment and our talent ID to make sure that our process is robust and it's strong, and our knowledge on the ground is really, really strong. That has to be connected to myself, to Craig Mulholland, to David Stevenson in the academy. The players that were mentioned in the tweet were players that were here before my time. I don't know a lot about the process in those moments, but what I can say is any mistakes that would be made in any transfer in any club would probably link back to the things that I mentioned there. So if the process isn't right, if the knowledge on the ground isn't right, if the connections between all the key stakeholders aren't right, then the likelihood of mistakes would go up. But it's now my responsibility to make sure that going forward we have a strong talent ID programme across the academy and in the first team to make sure that our mistakes are limited or mitigated. And we will do. That doesn't mean we'll get everyone right, that's for sure. But we will certainly up our chances.
Same person asked, what do you foresee happening over the next few years with regards to competitive games for the B team age group? As friendlies will always be friendlies, even if it's best v best.
Yeah, so there's lots of elements to that question. So the best v best games programme, we definitely buy into the principle of that. Right here, right now, that's I was going to say difficult, but it's not difficult, it's impossible to play that games programme because of the restrictions imposed upon clubs by coronavirus. The B team programme is very difficult this year. There's no getting away from that, but it's very difficult for all clubs. We've got some really interesting players out on loan. That loan strategy needs to be successful for us as well. We are pleased that Stevie Kelly now is starting to play. We believe he should have played a lot more, but he's starting to play at Ross County now. I think he was man of the match the weekend, so we are pleased with that. Kai Kennedy is now up at Inverness with a really strong opportunity for him to go and play first team football. Josh McPake down at Morton, playing in a really competitive Morton side down there. James Maxwell at Queen of the South, a couple of boys at Partick Thistle, Billy Kirkwood looking after all of that work. So we've had to make sure that our loan strategy this year was as strong as it can be, because we recognise that B team programme is difficult this year because the best v best programme doesn't happen. The UEFA Youth League is important to us. That's an under-19 competition primarily. The level of games in that in a competitive nature, and that's best v best and competitive. That's perfect for us. We've made no secret that the B team playing competitive football in the Football League structure is absolutely our preference. It's something we believe in. It's something we see hugely prevalent in other countries all across Europe. More countries by the season are beginning to do that. We are disappointed that Scottish football's not at that place at this moment in time.
Alan McPhail, is there more being put in place for the youth team so they can adapt better to step up to the first team level? Yeah.
Again, I think that ties into what I spoke about, the reorganisation earlier on. So we have reorganised some of our staff. So that's clearly for a reason, and clearly it's something that we think will help aid the development of our young players. We have created the role that Graham Murty has as the head of elite player development. That's really important to us as well. I touched on it earlier, that the players, the opportunities to train with the first team, with Stephen, Michael, Gary and Tom, those are huge opportunities to make sure players are ready when the opportunity comes to play for Rangers. We're also refocusing and joining up our sports science work to make sure that the expectations within our professional development phase, our under 18s and our B team are clear, and that players are ready when they're at first team level. I mentioned the loan strategy already. That's another part of it. So there's lots of different things going on there. That's a conversation that we keep alive all the time.
Next one, the Rangers, must be buckets of good talent available like Bassey. I suppose that's the anatomy of a transfer. Decent question. How do you determine who to go for, position, suitability, etc.?
Yeah, we're delighted with Calvin. Stephen and I were speaking the other day. We just love his personality first and foremost. He's in here with a smile on his face every day. He loves being here. He loves the opportunity that's been afforded to him at Rangers. The question's right, that there's lots of talent out there, and the key for us is making sure that our scouting network can identify those best opportunities in the markets that we're looking at. Those players would be assessed heavily by our scouts. We would then, Stephen, Gary, Michael and the guys in the first team, we would sit together, we would look at all the opportunities. Again, I mentioned they have to align with the squad plan or not scattergun. If we, in the summer, we're clearly looking to change the makeup of our full-back positions. And Calvin ticked that box, but there would be everything would get into that, from scouting, from background checking, from tracking via video, data to a lesser extent on a player at Calvin's age and stage. But yeah, there's lots of players like that, but we need to make sure that our scouts know them strongly, We tie Stephen and the coaching staff into the decision making really strongly, because there's no point in anybody coming here if Stephen's not 100% behind that. And they have to align to our squad network and our framework as well, otherwise there's also no point.
Gary Valentine, how many windows ahead do you usually plan for? For example, 2 or 3 windows time in advance. How does that work, that operation?
I think that's a good question as well, Gary. The pillars that I mentioned earlier, part of that is about squad planning, contract management, squad frameworks, player grading, succession planning. All of that goes on throughout the academy and into the first team. So there's various things going on anywhere between 2 and 4 windows in terms of contract thresholds, squad planning, depth charts, everything like that. So I don't think there's a binary answer to that question, but certainly over 2 to 4 windows we're looking at everything.
4 lads to the dream. Previously the club's business has been widely known. Since your arrival we've managed to make surprise signings as well as other things. How have you managed such a sharp and immediate turnaround to address that, particularly in the signing front?
That's been important to me. It's again a good question from the guys at 4 lads. We at Rangers, we have to act like Rangers, and part of that is doing our business professionally, with a bit of class and a bit of respect. And what I think that means is definitely conducting our business behind closed doors, not shouting from the rooftops, not conducting all our business through the media. So I've been very clear internally as to what my expectations are for the people that are working really closely to us, and the agents and the players that we're looking to sign as well. So it is something that we've managed to turn around sharply. I don't think you will ever keep everything under wraps. I understand that, because everything's not always in our control or my control. But I certainly wanted to make everybody remember that we're Rangers, and there's a certain way that I want us to conduct our business, and that's one of the things, and I'm glad that's been noticed.
Good. Sean, what is the biggest change you've seen since coming to Rangers?
We now feel like we're a really joined up football club. That's probably the biggest change. I think early on in my time I thought we had a lot of different things going on, a lot of good different things going on as well, but maybe not as joined up as I would have liked it to be. But now across the football department we feel like we are aligned, we feel like we're joined up, we're all working towards the same thing, but also with the same strategy and plan that everybody understands. But still with a long way to go. I think it's important to say that we are not content with where we're at today. There is so much energy to get us to where we want to get to. We're happy with our direction, but there's a long way still to go. But also I think what's important there in terms of that change is now, whether it's myself and James Bisgrove looking between commercial and football, or looking with Stuart Robertson, Andrew Dixon, James Blair across the whole board, we are all aligned between football, commercial and business within the club, and there is a plan that we are all part of and all working together on, and that's probably the biggest change. I see a lot of changes in scout recruitment. I see a lot of changes in how we are working in our academy. I see a lot of facility changes. But if you're asking me what the biggest change is, which the question is, I think, is definitely the way that we're operating and acting as a club. We feel much more aligned and joined up together now.
Stephen Louch, the biggest challenges and successes of transfer dealings in the COVID situation right now? It's a good question.
Very good question. I think the biggest challenge, and I'm sure the fans understand this because they're working through it and they're living through it in their daily lives, and maybe even in their professional lives as well, that the biggest challenge was definitely coronavirus and the uncertainty that brought, not only to football but to people's lives, people's healths. There was a varying degree of understanding within the market as a group of clubs, as a group of sporting directors that I speak to all the time. We totally understood the impact on the market. Maybe not all agents did, maybe not all players did. Again, I said last week, that's not a criticism, because it was something very new for everybody to get their heads around. The impact on the market was huge. The impact on the club was huge. As I said last week, the chairman Douglas Park and the investors have really bought into investing and helping the club move forward in the most difficult of times. So that was definitely the biggest challenge, and then probably as a result the biggest success was that we managed to navigate our way through all of that to get to where we wanted the squad to get to, in a market that was more turbulent and rocky and unpredictable than any that I've ever worked in before across the last 16 or 17 years, however long it's been. So definitely those two things go hand in hand, but I'm pleased with where we've got to, but it wasn't easy, that's for sure. How
heavy an influence does data analytics play in recruitment, sports science and coaching at the club?
Yeah, I think across football now there's been huge evolution in that area. It's another area that we have invested in across sports science, across medical and across scouting and recruitment. So the impact is significantly greater now than it was previously. But again, long way to go there to really, I think we've got the right tools, I think we've got the right people in place, but the impact of that is starting, but there's probably quite a long journey to go there. So yes, it's part of our growth, it's part of our investment, it's definitely got an impact on the decisions we make, but more work to do there as well.
Gavin Kelly, what would you rather do, sign a targeted player on a pre-contract or sign a targeted player on an initial loan with an option to buy, and why?
If you ask me that, I'm going to say both. As long as they align to our strategy and our plan, I'm comfortable with both of those scenarios. I think they're both very positive scenarios, because what both of them mean is your market intel and your knowledge on the player is probably strong. As long as they both fit the strategy, both of those situations are good ones. We certainly don't want to collect players, but both strategies work for me.
Talk us through who's involved in the decision to sign a player, who's on the transfer committee once 3 or 4 targets for a position are identified.
So we don't have a transfer committee, first and foremost. I don't know if that's something that's out there that people think we do have. I'm not sure if they do or not, but we don't. So once the scouting work has been done, whether it's names that's come from the scouts, from myself or from Stephen or Michael or Gary or anybody, once the work's been done and the lists are narrowed down to longer lists, it would always be Andy Scolding, myself, Stephen Gerrard, Michael Beale, Gary McAllister, Tom Coulshaw, everybody sitting together, understanding again what the plan looks like, making sure everybody's clear on what the profiles need to look like, understanding how the market looks, what our shortlist look like, trying to rank those players in the order of the preference that the manager would really like, both in terms of the profile and in terms of the individuals. And then once we've decided who those players might be, it's up to myself and normally Stuart Robertson and Andrew Dixon to try and get those deals across the line if we can. But equally, we need to be prepared to, if there's a player that we want, we also need to be prepared to walk away if the deal's not right for us and move on to the next one. So that's why our scouting and recruitment work has to be so strong.
Elsie McCready, hi Ross, what's been the most pleasing thing for you since coming to Rangers, and what do you see for us in the future?
Probably the most pleasing things, a lot of the things I touched on earlier, but I'm not sure if I said it or not. I think that the progress and the growth that we've made is only possible because there's loads of energy from everybody that I come into contact with every day, whether it's Stephen's got an incredible amount of enthusiasm, energy, desire. He's relentless to achieve what he wants to achieve here for Rangers, as have I, as have the board, and as have all the staff that's working with us here as well. So I would say that's been the pleasing thing, is how much I've felt the support of everybody here since I got here. Because as a sporting director, I can have a clear plan, a clear vision, a clear way of working, but if nobody buys into that, we're in trouble. But I've felt that I've had massive support from everybody since I've got here, and that's definitely been the most pleasing, because I've been pushing at an open door to make sure that we make the changes that I think we need to make to get to where we want to get to. I said it many times before as well. I felt the foundations were good when I got here, which is credit to the work that's been done previously. But to have all the people here being behind us to move it to the next level has been really positive.
And the final one, where do you think we are now in terms of when you first walked in the door to where we are today?
I think the nature of this club is we always want to be restless. We always want to be looking for what's next, what more can we do, where can we take things to another level. I feel that over the last year we have improved all of the things that we've talked about improving.
Obviously RYDC predated your time at the club, but over the course of maybe 2 decades, it's almost £9 million have been able to provide the academy. £450,000 January this year. I guess that's a huge impact for the club and the day-to-day running that Craig can use that money for.
No, we are hugely thankful to the RYDC and all of the work of our fans in supporting that. 9 million is an incredible figure to talk about, investment into the development of young players and the development into our structures here across the academy. We are hugely thankful for that. We hope that level of support will continue moving forward, and we hope that we can also repay that level of backing that we've received from RYDC and the Rangers fans to make a club and an academy that everybody's truly proud of as well.